Well, we started a series last week on relationships, and because today is the day after Valentine's, I wanted to talk about that close, intimate relationship that you possibly are in. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, great day. I'm not in one right now, so this really stinks. Just hang with me. You're going to learn some things that'll be applicable for you, and who knows, maybe a year or two from now, you might find this stuff very, very applicable. But I want to talk about some keys to making the most of that intimate relationship that you're a part of. Now, let me just say, as I begin this talk, those of you who know me well, I have never hidden this. I have made some big mistakes in my life in the area of relationships. So it is fair to say I don't want to listen to him because he has, by his own lips, said he has failed. And that's one way you can approach it. And you can just tune out if you'd like and text on your phone, and I get it. That would be all right. Or you could say maybe he has learned some lessons along the way. Maybe at 52 years of age, he finally has figured some things out. And maybe, just maybe, if I listen to him, I can avoid some of the pitfalls that he has found himself in. And maybe, just maybe, I can look at his relationship with Jane and I can see it as a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I can maybe aspire to have that kind of relationship. I hope that's how you will hear me this morning. I believe that there's some things that I have learned along the way. I believe there's some things I have failed at miserably, but I think there's some things that can be very helpful. Sadly, when you come to faith in Christ, it doesn't mean that you necessarily develop good people skills. Sometimes it takes a little while for you to actually be trained. Some of us, the training that we grew up in our home has terribly predisposed us to not being good in relationships. Even though we don't want to follow the pattern of our dad or our mom, often we look back and say, you know what, I'm doing exactly what they did. So when we come to faith in Christ, which is the most important thing, after that we want to learn, how do I deal with relationships in a way that's positive, in a way that is going to be healthy, in a way that's going to be long-lasting, in a way that's going to honor Christ. That's what I want to talk to you about today. I've titled this, The 5 C's in a Happy Love Life. And so I want you to hang with me because I think it's going to be really, really helpful. And I want you to know I need you to participate. Most of us never really look at our relationship life. We never really put it up in front of us or look in a mirror and say, what is my relationship life really like? And I want you to do that. It is important for us to evaluate how we are doing. In our finances, we always have an evaluation time, at least income tax time. You at least begin to look at how much did I make, how much did I spend, how did I do? Most of us do annual physicals to see how we're doing physically, but most of us never, ever check up on how we really are in that intimate relationship with that person closest to us. Well, having said that, get your pen out and write down number 1. These are the 5 C's in a happy love life. Number 1, you can guess it. Everybody would say this is true, communication. Please write that down. Communication, it is key, it is critical, it is very, very important. And sadly, this is where most of us go off the rail. James chapter 1 says this in verse 19, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Now, you know we do this exactly backwards sometimes, don't we? Are you like me? This was one that took me a long time to really get. Let's look at it again. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to read with me. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Read aloud, please. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Secret number 1 of a satisfying marriage or committed relationship is communication. I believe that upward of 80% of all marriage problems relate to poor communication or the lack of communication between two people. The average couple, studies show us, talk less than 10 minutes a day to each other. And yet they amass 46 hours a week of television watching. Now think about that. A little more than an hour in a week face-to-face talking, 46 hours a week of watching television. Now, I know people's communication styles are different. I know men and women's communication styles are different, and that can be an overgeneralization, but you know, the person that you're intimate with, your partner, your spouse, you know that you come from different places and have different communication styles. Years ago, I read a book called Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. It was an interesting title. It captured my attention, and I bought the book, read it, and then I preached a sermon on that thought. The whole idea behind that was men are very compartmentalized. This is a generalization, but you'll get what I'm talking about. By and large, men enjoy talking about a subject, dealing with that subject, and then talking about another subject and dealing with that subject. And the book, again, don't get mad, it's just an overgeneralization, but there is some truth to it, said women at times, their conversation is more like a plate of spaghetti. Their point was, a woman can begin talking to you about their child's day at school. And that can lead to them realizing that the tires in the car need more air pressure, which will lead them to talking about they need to lose some weight, which will lead that they will go on this route around the world, and then it will go to their mother who has been sick, and then they want to go to the family reunion, and it'll go all the way around, and then it will come back to the kid in preschool. And the man is like, what just happened? How did we go there? But that's just the way they say many people communicate. That leads to troubles. Many are like this. Many don't want to listen to all the stuff. You just want to know problems. Let's offer a solution. But all the studies say people don't want a solution in that person closest to them. They want to know that you are listening to them. They don't want you to solve the problem. They just want to know that you genuinely care. The greatest gift I can give to my partner is to listen to her. I mean, really listen to her. It gives her a sense that what she says matters to me. She's valuable. Guys, you can't listen while you're texting. You know, you can't listen while you're checking the scores on ESPN on your phone. It means that you put that down and you listen. It doesn't mean I have to give her the answer. It just means I need to listen to her. Mastering communication is a big deal. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to just take a moment and I want you to evaluate yourself on communication on a scale of 1 to 10. If your communication is of a minimal level, if you say, sheesh, 10 minutes a week, we don't do that. I mean, we don't do any of that. Then I want you to give yourself a 0 or a 1 or 2. If you are a little bit better and you say maybe a 4 or 5, or if you talk all the time and you feel like communication is a strength for you, give yourself a 10. But I want you to put it down. How do you evaluate yourself as in communication? It is so important. And when you stop talking to each other, you end up having some serious troubles. God wants us to be very encouraging to each other in our relationships too, the way we communicate. I see people sometimes around the church and I see them very fault-finding about their mates. And can I tell you something? That shouldn't be the way we talk. You come to a marriage with all kinds of expectations, and when they aren't met, we want to fix our partner. We think that's the deal. Let's fix them to be what we want them to be. And the easiest way to do this is to point out their shortcomings. At least that's what we think. We need to instruct them on how they should change. But this is a devastating thing. Marriage expert H. Norman Wright, he says this, look on the screen. He says, fault finding deeply wounds your spouse. You are saying, in effect, I don't accept you for who you are. You don't measure up, and I can't accept you until you do. That's a devastating message that can create uncertainty and anxiety and withdrawal. Fault finding may work short term, but it doesn't fundamentally change the heart, and that's what's most important. And here's something else, and you may want to scribble this somewhere. Fault finding is contagious. When you find fault all the time, it is contagious. It'll teach your spouse and your kids to be critical and intolerant of the faults in others, and you do not want to create a household like that. You want to have a household where people are positive, where they think positive, good thoughts. I love the way this is worded in the Message. Jesus speaking, Matthew chapter 7 says this, don't pick on people. Don't jump on their failures or criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging. It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Important. Fault finding actually inadvertently reinforces the very behaviors you want to encourage. Let me say it like this, and again, this is a good principle. It's something I try to practice. Our loved ones tend to become what we praise in them. Our loved ones tend to become what we praise in them. When you have a child, you see little attitudes that are great. You say, I love the way you did that. That was precious. The way you looked after that person and the way you went and became friends with that person nobody else was being friends with, I loved that. What does that do? It tells the child this is a good thing. When you catch your spouse doing something that's meaningful, that blesses you, you say, thank you. That was beautiful the way you did that. Now, I know there are times we need to deal with faults, but when we do, there should be such a reservoir of goodwill built up that it doesn't even, it's not a big problem at all when you have to talk to somebody about their struggles. Again, write down 1 to 10 how you did on communication, then write this down for number 2. The second thing is consideration. Key in a committed relationship is consideration. And again, I want you to be honest, and this is one of those things that I love. I love when you leave church and you get to go home, and in the car, you say, can we talk about the sermon today? And you say, how do you think we did on communication? Or how do you think we did on consideration? Philippians chapter 2 says it like this: instead of being motivated by selfish ambition or vanity, each of you should in humility be moved to treat one another as more important than yourself. You know, this is what Christianity is supposed to be about. When we see people with haughty spirits, when we see people who want to make it all about themselves, they are totally missing the spirit of what Christ is all about. Now, this was written about the church, but it's also written in the context of how we live in marriage. This is an important thing. Philippians says the same thing. What does it mean to treat someone as more important than yourself? It means to give attention to them. It means to show genuine consideration for them. Consideration means giving attention to little things, to pay attention to the needs of your wife or your husband, and it means doing it with common courtesy. Have you ever noticed how quickly this vanishes after we get married? I mean, before we're married, we're doing everything. You know, I show you how much in love I was with Jane. I went over to her house and surprised her and cut her grass. I haven't cut the grass since we've been married, but I did it. I mean, I went over to her house and figured out how to do that, and I did it because I was so wanting to woo her. And then we get married, and what happens when we get married? Suddenly we take for granted and we don't treat with consideration that person who means the most to us. Philippians says, esteem the other as more important. Evaluate yourself on this, please. I want you to think about it. I want you to be serious. I want you to say, do I stink on this? Am I considerate of my mate? If not, 1 or 2 or 3, okay, 4, 5, 6, or I really feel like I'm doing great at this, 8, 9, or 10. I hope you don't get tired of me saying this, but I will say it as long as I'm the pastor here. My wife is the finest woman I have ever met in my life. She is old school in the best sense of the word. She believes in hard work. She believes in honesty. She believes in saving money. She doesn't believe you should ever pay interest. You shouldn't buy stuff you're going to have to pay interest on. She manages our house in a way that is unbelievable. She prepares gourmet meals, not just for me, but for anybody who comes to our house and eats. She serves this church in ways many of you could never imagine. I see this every day. Give you an example. Last week, I forget where I was at a hospital or meeting or something, and she was getting ready for the women's Bible study. And she comes up here on Wednesdays, and she gets everything set up, and it's kind of her quiet time. But somehow, between Sunday and Wednesday, somebody had seriously messed up the women's bathroom. By that I mean they had left a mess in the toilet, and then they had somehow or another locked the door to the stall. And my wife had to crawl under the stall, plunge the toilet, unlock the door, and other than one slightly irreverent text she sent to me in the middle of all of this, she did it with a smile. I mean, she did it with a smile. I don't know how she did. I mean, I don't know, because I just crawling around on the floor, but she was doing that. She visits the sick. She writes cards to those who aren't here. She writes letters to newcomers. She outworks most of us. She has a vibrant relationship with her 85-year-old mom and her 31-year-old daughter. She keeps 2 of our grandchildren 2 days, sometimes 3 days a week, and other grandchildren as the need arises. She goes on ministry appointments. She cooks, For the church, she never complains. But here's the deal I want you to get. If I'm not careful, I can take her for granted because she is so good. She is so good. And can I tell you something? You don't want to take somebody that's really good for granted. You don't want to do that. You want to every day experience it afresh and realize you are so good to me. You are so good to me. To make a marriage magical, I have to be considerate of her. I have to stop her from cooking sometime in the kitchen and say, I want to take you out. Not because the food is better out. It's not better anywhere out. But because sometimes she just needs to stop cooking and she needs to go out. I need to sometimes go with her shopping. Not because I like to go with her shopping, not because I want to go with her shopping, but sometimes I just need to carry the bags for her, and I need to let her off by the door, and I need to be there to help her. I need to bring her a surprise home sometime as a way of saying, you are so very good to me. How are you doing on that? How are you doing on that? I used to teach a lot about the pedestal principle, the idea of how beautiful a family would be if each of us put the other up on a pedestal and said, I want to honor you and I want to serve you. And the other person said, no, but I want to honor you and I want to serve you. And you both tried to just out-serve and honor each other. Wouldn't that be a cool way to live? Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? My wife does it very, very well. I want to do it very, very well. How are you doing on that? Number 3. The 5th C in a happy love life is compromise. Compromise. Now, this may be hard for you to imagine, but early in my ministry, I did a lot of marriage conferences. I know, that doesn't make sense, but I did. And I think it's because of struggles I had in my own life, I became kind of an expert on marriage, what the Bible taught about marriage. I knew a lot in my mind, but I just was struggling in some areas. But one of the things that happened at every conference I ever did is somebody would end up saying to me at the end of the session, you didn't deal with the main point. Well, we've been here for 2 days. We've talked about a lot of stuff. What did I not deal with? It's the main point. You never said, this is usually a guy sitting and saying this, you never told us who's in charge. Are you an idiot? What are you talking about? Who is in charge? What are you saying? But they had been to a seminar way back when, and they had learned the hierarchy of the man is over the woman, and they were just wanting me to say, in God's eyes, the man is over the woman, so women, you do what your man says. Can I tell you something? That's crazy. That is crazy. The Bible says, as people who are under Christ, we are all equal under Christ. The fall maybe put us with a hierarchy, but under Christ, what was lost has now been reestablished. We are co-equal in every way. There are things that Jane is so much better at than me, and when she has an opinion about something and I need to listen to that opinion, and oftentimes it needs to go a different way than my way, and some of you want to hold on to your way, and that's the wrong way to ever have the kind of life that you really want to have. Does that make sense to you? It's very, very important for us to get this. Ephesians chapter 2, 5:21 says this, submit to one another. Out of reverence to Christ, submit to one another. 1 Corinthians 13:5 says this, it does not demand its own way. Talking of love, it does not demand its own way. It's not irritable and it keeps no record of being wrong. With that first sentence is what I want you to see. It does not demand its own way. A lot of what we call incompatibility is simply selfishness or stubbornness. It's people who say, no, this is the way we did it in my family. This is the way we're going to do it. And in a marriage, there has to be compromise. Both parties have to be willing to give. Cracks me up when people say, well, I can't do that because he won't let me, or I can't do that because she won't let me. It's like, that seems foreign to me. We're going to have conflicts in marriage, that is for sure, but people who have been married 30, 40, 50 years, they say the same thing. We didn't agree on everything, but we learned how to negotiate and compromise in ways that were honoring to both of us. There's so many things you have to compromise on. You have to compromise on what kind of house you're going to live in, where you're going to live, how you're going to discipline your kids, who's going to decorate, how are you going to decorate the house, how are you going to take your trips, how many trips a year are you going to get to take, can you take a vacation, what type of vacation. These things are all so very important, but you need to be willing to compromise with each other. All of that's very, very important. Number 4, write this down, courtship. We'll move quickly, courtship. Now, y'all, one thing I have learned is the Bible is not a book for prudes, for people who think that maybe it somehow is. You've not read it. It speaks of romance and sex, and it speaks about it with great clarity. And it makes a lot more sense than 50 Shades of Grey or whatever people are talking about today. I can guarantee you that. Proverbs chapter 5, verses 18 and 19. I love this. It says this, may your fountain be blessed and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth, a loving doe, a graceful deer. May her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? God invented sex and he intended for us to get to share in this most intimate of relationships. He created it, and when he created it, he said, this is very, very good. Physical affection is vital in most satisfying marriages. We don't believe that sexual intimacy is only for procreation. We believe it's a beautiful part of a relationship where two people are committed to each other in love and fidelity, but sadly, many of us stop courting each other soon after we're married. And that's a bad mistake. We see it all the time. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 says this, relish life with your spouse you love each and every day of your precarious life. Each day is God's gift. It's all you get in exchange for the hard work of staying alive. Love your wife. Love your wife. So very important. Give yourself a grade on this, guys and gals. Give yourself a grade, please. How are you doing in your courtship? How are you doing? Now, we've had some technical difficulties, so I don't know if we could do this or not. But before the service, I said to Sandra, I said, I had a good idea, but I didn't do this, so you got to do it and see if there's anything out there. I said, I want you to go on Facebook pages of our village people, and I want you to just see, does anybody have any success yesterday with courtship? Anybody I want to see the romantic heart of the village. Now, my screen here is not working, so I don't know if, Sandra, were you able to find anybody? Were you able to get anybody? Jimmy and Sharon, y'all must have had a good Valentine's yesterday. What did they say on Facebook? Let me see what they say on Facebook. This was from Sharon. Best Valentine's weekend ever. I love you, Jimmy Mayo 4. That's awesome. You guys lead the way. That's very, very good. Do we have another one? Do we have anybody else? This is Tony and Shatori. Are they here? They're not here. Okay, they're a new couple to our church. Great people. So they must have said something on Facebook. Shatori wrote, Happy Valentine's Day. What a day. Absolutely amazing. I love you, Tony. That's very, very good. Very, very good. Let's see, anybody else till we get? Rick and Denise. Now, I know Denise isn't on Facebook, so Rick must have posted. What did Rick post? So for Valentine's Day, we cleaned the basement by moving crap to the garage. Sometimes this summer, we will clean the garage by moving crap to the basement. Happy Valentine's Day to y'all. All right, so follow Jimmy and Sharon on this Valentine's thing, and don't follow Rick and Denise. Number 5, write this down, all right? Final C is this, commitment. Write this down. Commitment's real important. Okay. There's so much to pick from with what Rick puts on his Facebook page, and so anyway, I'm glad that was the one we got. He started by wishing everybody yesterday happy VD Day. It's like, it's Valentine's Day. It's not. All right, Ephesians chapter 5, verses 21, 22. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do unto the Lord. And husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. It's a priority, this commitment we make, but above our work, above our hobbies, above our friends, there is our spouse. And our spouse is the one that we put. God is the only one who has a place above our spouse. Our spouse is in that precious place above all others. I like this. I saw this, and I thought it was really, really great. A reporter asked an old couple, how did your marriage stay together for 65 years? And she said, we were born in a time when if something was broken, we'd fix it, not throw it away. Isn't that good? Isn't that very, very good? Dr. Henry Cloud said this, the human heart needs to know, are you for me or are you against me? Are you for me or are you against me? The whole point of all of marriage is you want to be committed to each other. Jane and I get asked a lot, what's our number one advice for marriage? I say the same thing. Number one, choose well. Choose well, that's really important. But the other thing that I say all the time is keep a soft heart. And let me tell you why. It's so easy to feel hurt from the other person and let your heart get a little hard. But you hide it behind a smile. You don't let anybody know. And then another hurt comes along, and you still smile, but your heart gets a little harder. And then another hurt comes along, and you get a little harder in your heart, and a little harder in your heart, and a little harder in your heart. until it is just crusty, cold, dead. What I have learned, and it took me a long time, is don't let your heart grow hard. There may be a time that Jane says something that maybe doesn't sit exactly right with me. Maybe she's having a bad day. She says something that I don't like exactly. But you know what? The second I feel my heart begin to crust over, I say, no. She is precious to me. She's the finest woman I have ever met. She's loved me when nobody I thought would ever love me. She cares for me. She's with me till the end. I keep my heart soft. The advice she gives to people always is the same. Don't go to bed angry. Now, there have been times we've been up for a week or two before. And she believes this principle very, very much. We're going to stay with this thing until we get it right. But I can't tell you the number of times when we have gotten into the bed and it's just that quiet kind of a thing. You guys know, and ladies know, just that quiet deal. And she'll say, "Are you mad at me?" Yeah, a little bit. Can I snuggle with you? Okay. And then the next morning, I don't even remember what we were mad about. Don't even remember what it was. So that's very, very good advice. Let me give you a bonus C, and it's the most important C of all the C's, and that's Christ. Put that down. Put it down. Why is Christ the most important ingredient of all? Because it is Christ who gives us the power and the strength to do the other five. Without Christ, I would be a disaster without Christ. He has taken a guy that was all mixed up and screwed up on the inside, and he has given me the capacity to learn to communicate, to learn to be faithful, to learn to be considerate, to learn to make a commitment, to learn about courtship. He is the one, and when I let him work in me and through me, it is something so beautiful. When I feel his love pouring through me, it is a good thing, but it's not me, it's him inside of me. And it takes us a long time to realize how powerful that can be. I love people who are in AA. They talk about a higher power, and they give it different names, and I understand people are on different places in their journey, and we respect that. But for me, I discovered Christ gave me the power to really have a changed life, to really stop being a self-centered man and to live my life in love towards God and love towards others. Christ made the difference. Christ made the difference. I've always liked the picture of a triangle in a marriage. As two people move towards God at the top, they move more and more toward each other. I love that my wife will pray with me. I love that sometimes when emotions are we've heard something really sad, maybe affecting one of you, we just will get on our knees together and we'll pray and we'll cry and we'll talk about that together. I love that I can go through this life with a woman that loves God, and as I want to love God more and as she loves God more, I find he is making us a sweeter couple together, and you can have that too. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. Would you bow your heads with me, please? What I want to ask each of you to do is to think about, where are you in this whole Christ talk? If you were being honest in your relationship, does Christ play a big role, or is he kind of just, because he'll play the role that you want him to. I mean, honestly, if you want to keep him kind of on the side, he'll stay on the side. Maybe you're coming to church, and that's a good thing. Maybe you're coming to church and you're beginning to talk about it a little bit more, and maybe you haven't opened yourself up fully to how he would want to lead your life. But maybe you're taking baby steps, and that's awesome. Or maybe you'd say, I think I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm realizing I want him to lead the way. I want what he wants for me. I want my life to be God-honoring. I want to learn how to love the way Jesus loved. I want to learn how to be the man or the woman that Jesus wants me to be. Y'all, I have this dream in our church of one day having scores and scores and scores and scores of dynamic couples who love God. They're not judgmental. They don't think themselves better than anybody. They just have discovered God's grace, and they love him, and they're so excited. And then they could be such a help to all the other families out there who desperately need some help and some role models to maybe show them the way, to encourage them. And of course, I have a picture of single people flooding this place. Single people who say, you know what? Jesus is the one who completes me. There may be a person I'll walk through life with one day holding hands. Right now, it's just me and Jesus, but that's okay. You are whole right now. You're not a half of a person, you're whole. And I envision one day hundreds of singles in this place, excited about walking this life with Jesus. Father, I pray that you would make us great lovers. Lovers of our families, lovers of that special person in our life, lovers of those outside of the church who maybe feel like their defenses are up even when they talk about the church or we talk about the church or you. Lord, just let us be lovers. Let your love shine through us above all things. And I pray that our marriages will be strengthened. The relationships represented in this room will be strengthened. And I pray we'll talk about in our ride home today how we're doing on all these things. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.